There is a particular kind of professional confidence that comes from operating a system that was designed to track objects moving at Mach 10 in the upper atmosphere, in the dark, at ranges measured in hundreds of nautical miles. The operators who manage that system, after enough time working with it, develop a specific relationship with threats. The relationship is not fear. It is closer to the feeling a cardiovascular surgeon develops toward a routine procedure. Not contempt, not casualness, but the settled competence of someone who has done this many times with equipment that has never let them down, watching a situation unfold in exactly the way the training manual said it would. This is the mood aboard USS Chafee, DDG-90, an Arleigh Burke Flight 2, a destroyer commissioned in 2003 at 1:53 local time in the Japan Sea, on a night in which the air temperature is 8 degrees Celsius. The sea state is 3, and the midwatch team has been keeping station on the same patrol box for the better part of 6 hours. The Korea Strait is 60 nautical miles to the southwest. The nearest friendly port is Sasebo, Japan, approximately 210 nautical miles to the southeast. The coffee in the Combat Information Center is from a batch made at midnight and has been resting on a warming plate for nearly 2 hours. It has the flavor and consistency of warm motor oil, cut with ambition. The watch supervisor has made a note to brew a fresh pot at 2 o'clock. This is, at 1:53, the most pressing item on the evening's agenda. And then, at 1:57, the surface search radar operator reports a contact. Bearing 015, range 11 nautical miles, small surface track, speed approximately 32 knots. Course, converging. The contact is moving fast for something that small, and it is moving directly toward USS Chafee, with the kind of purposeful geometry that eliminates coincidence as an explanation. The radar operator updates the track. Range 10.8 miles. Speed unchanged. The tactical action officer, who was reviewing the previous watch's log entries, with the specific expression of a person doing paperwork that will matter to nobody but is required anyway, sets down his pen. He looks at the contact data. He looks at the geographic picture. He picks up the internal comms handset. Bridge combat. I have a fast mover bearing 015 11 miles converging course. Possible North Korean patrol craft. Interrogating IFF now. The bridge acknowledges. The officer of the deck picks up his binoculars and looks into the dark in the direction of bearing 015. He cannot see anything. At 11 miles on a moonless night in the Japan Sea, this is expected. He lowers the binoculars. He makes a note in the deck log. The contact is still converging. Here is the moment that matters, and it matters in a way that has nothing to do with the capability of whatever is bearing down on USS Chafee at 32 knots. It matters because of what USS Chafee is doing tonight, and why, and who knows she is doing it. USS Chafee is operating in the Japan Sea as part of a trilateral maritime exercise with Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force destroyer JS Kirishima and Republic of Korea Navy destroyer ROKS Sejong the Great. The exercise has been running for 72 hours. It is a surveillance and interoperability exercise focused on tracking North Korean ballistic missile launches and coordinating the three navies' response procedures. The exercise is not classified. The schedule of operations was filed with the appropriate maritime authorities before it began. The fact that 3 Allied destroyers are operating together in the Japan Sea tonight is not a secret. It is deliberately not a secret. The exercise is itself a message, of the kind that the alliance sends periodically to remind Pyongyang that the waters off the Korean peninsula are monitored by multiple sophisticated systems, operated by multiple coordinated navies at all times, including on Tuesday nights in October when the weather is cold and the coffee is poor. What is classified at the level that matters for the next 40 minutes is the precise current position of JS Kirishima and ROKS Sejong the Great. They are not in USS Chafee's patrol box. They are operating in adjacent sectors, approximately 30 and 44 nautical miles away respectively, maintaining emissions control protocols that mean their radar and communication signatures are reduced. From the perspective of anyone watching the Japan Sea tonight, from satellite, from a coastline sensor, from a fast patrol boat that was dispatched from a North Korean naval base after a patrol routine detected a lone destroyer operating in a specific patch of water. USS Chafee appears to be alone. She is not alone, but she looks alone, and she is 11 miles from a fast-moving contact on a converging course, and the next several minutes are going to be instructive for everyone involved. The contact reaches 9 miles. The IFF interrogation has returned nothing. The SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite has noted a brief, low-powered radar emission on a frequency consistent with the fire control radar carried by North Korean Nongo-class fast attack craft. Small, fast, capable of 40+ knots, armed with anti-ship missiles and torpedoes, and operated by crews who train infrequently and operate equipment that was largely manufactured before the Soviet Union dissolved. The emission lasted 3 seconds and then stopped, which is consistent with a crew that has been told to maintain radar silence, but briefly forgot or briefly could not resist the urge to ping the contact ahead of them. The SLQ-32 has logged the emission. It has matched it against the threat library entry for Nongo-class fire control systems. The match is high confidence. The tactical action officer has this information. He has also just received, via secure chat on the Link 16 data link, a message from JS Kirishima. Contact data, corroborating track on the same bearing, confirming the contact has been in motion for approximately 22 minutes from a coastal origin point, consistent with a North Korean naval facility at Wonsan. This is the vulnerability window, and it deserves to be described precisely because it is real. USS Chafee is alone in her sector. The rules of engagement for this exercise permit the use of active countermeasures and self-defense weapons under specific conditions of confirmed hostile intent, which require a level of deceleration that a fast patrol boat approaching at 32 knots on a moonless night has not yet formally established. The approach profile is aggressive. The geometry is concerning. The contact is now 8 miles out and has not altered course. 8 miles at 32 knots is approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes is not a long time when the question being asked is whether the approaching vessel is conducting a provocation or something with worse intentions. The tactical action officer has to operate simultaneously in both possibilities and prepare for both outcomes, which means his next several decisions have to be right on the first attempt. At 2:04, he takes 3 actions in quick succession. First, he keys the bridge combat, man battle stations. This is not a drill. Second, he transmits to JS Kirishima and ROKS Sejong the Great via Link 16, requesting they come to 30 knots on a converging heading toward USS Chafee's sector. Third, and this is the action that will become the most operationally relevant, he authorizes the SPY-1D to go to active full power mode on the bearing of the contact. The SPY-1D multifunction phased array radar does not have a gentle setting. When it goes to full power active emission, it does so with the electromagnetic subtlety of a lighthouse deciding to become a searchlight. The radar beam that reaches the North Korean patrol craft at 2:04:31 is, from the receiving end, the functional equivalent of being told by a system that can track ballistic missiles in space that it has noticed you specifically and is now paying you its undivided attention. The patrol craft's radar warning receiver, assuming the crew is monitoring it, which they appear to be, based on what happens in the next 90 seconds, will have received a signal that is unambiguous in its meaning. You have been acquired. You are being tracked. The ship you are approaching can see you, says you, and is not surprised. The contact slows. Not immediately. There is a delay of perhaps 12 seconds that might represent a moment of internal discussion aboard the patrol craft about whether to continue. Then the contact decelerates from 32 knots to approximately 21 knots. The converging course does not change. The deceleration is not a retreat, but it is a recalibration, and it is the first indication that the crew of whatever is out there in the dark has received the SPY-1D's message and is thinking about it. The tactical action officer notes the deceleration. He notes that the contact is not turned away. He updates his situation report to 7th Fleet, which has been receiving his contact reports since 1:57 and has already looped in the intelligence watch in Yokosuka. He looks at the time. It is 2:06. Battle stations are manned. The SM-2 engagement envelopes have been calculated and recalculated as the contact speed changed. They are available. They are not authorized. They are simply available, with the readiness of a very expensive option that nobody is particularly eager to exercise against a patrol boat that is, at this moment, doing 21 knots and thinking. Let us talk about the Nongo-class fast attack craft, because understanding what it is tells you a great deal about the decision that whoever is aboard it is currently making. The Nongo-class, also called the Rodong-class in some Western assessments, is a North Korean-developed fast attack craft that entered service in the early 2000s. It displaces approximately 130 tons, runs on diesel propulsion that can push it to speeds in the low to mid-40s, in knots in optimal conditions, and is armed with 2 anti-ship missiles in the configuration most commonly observed in satellite imagery, plus a torpedo tube arrangement and deck-mounted autocannon for close-range engagements. It is, by the standards of the assets that typically constitute a coastal naval force in this part of the world, a credible piece of hardware. It is not a joke. The anti-ship missiles it carries, a locally developed variant that draws on older Soviet design principles, have a range of approximately 50 nautical miles in favorable conditions, a radar seeker that is functional but not sophisticated, and a guidance system that works acceptably against vessels that are not maneuvering aggressively and do not have electronic countermeasures. The phrase "do not have electronic countermeasures" is doing a great deal of work in that sentence. USS Chafee has electronic countermeasures. She has the Mark 36 Super Rapid Bloom offboard chaff system, which can deploy a radar reflective cloud at a distance from the ship, large enough to seduce an incoming missile seeker away from the actual vessel. She has the SLQ-32, which, in its active jamming configuration, can degrade the guidance system of an inbound missile significantly enough that the already marginal CEP of the Nongo's weapons becomes, in practical terms, a number measured in hundreds of meters rather than tens. She has the Mk-15 Phalanx close-in weapon system, which, as a final layer defense against a missile that has survived everything else, fires 20mm rounds at 3,000 per minute and operates on a probability curve that is not favorable for the incoming weapon. And she has the SM-2 Block 3B missiles in her vertical launch cells, each of which costs more than the entire Nongo-class vessel appears to be worth on the secondary market for Soviet-derived naval hardware, and each of which can intercept an anti-ship missile in its terminal phase at a range that makes the entire preceding defensive architecture feel somewhat redundant. The Nongo-class crew knows some of this. The comprehensive version of this picture, the actual operational depth of USS Chafee's defensive architecture, is classified. What is not classified, what is broadly understood in every naval force that operates in proximity to U.S. Navy surface combatants, is the general principle. Engaging an Arleigh Burke with what you have is not a decision that ends well for the aggressor. The physics are not favorable. The electronics are not favorable. The math is not favorable. The only variable that could change the equation is surprise, and at 2:04:31, when the SPY-1D went to full power active, surprise was removed from the equation with approximately 10 megawatts of electromagnetic radiation. The contact is at 6 miles. It is doing 16 knots. It has not fired. It is still on a converging course, but the convergence is slower now, and at 16 knots the geometry has changed from aggressive to ambiguous. The tactical action officer is watching the track. He is also watching the Link 16 picture, which is showing him that ROKS Sejong the Great has come to 30 knots and is now 29 nautical miles to the southwest, closing. JS Kirishima is 21 miles to the northwest, also closing. USS Chafee is still alone in her sector in the physical sense. In the tactical sense, she has not been alone since 204. Below decks, in the space where the electronic warfare suite operates, the intelligence collection that has been running since the initial contact report is producing results. The 3-second fire control radar emission at 159 has been fully characterized. The Nongo's navigation radar, which has been running continuously since the contact first appeared and provides the crew's own situational picture, is emitting on a frequency and with a pulse pattern that are now fully logged. The secondary communications signals, short burst transmissions that the SLQ-32 has been pulling off the electromagnetic environment at irregular intervals since 201, are encrypted, but their frequency, timing, burst duration, and signal architecture are all recordable and recorded, and these characteristics will eventually tell analysts things about North Korean naval communications protocols that Standoff Collection has been trying to establish for years. The patrol craft is communicating with someone ashore, almost certainly a command element at the Wonsan facility, and the timing and duration of those communications correlate precisely with the contact's behavioral changes. The deceleration at 204, the further reduction to 16 knots at 207. Someone ashore is advising the crew to reconsider. The electronic warfare officer is building a collection report in real time. The fire control radar characterization alone, 3 seconds of emission, but 3 seconds at close range, at an emission level that produced a high-fidelity signature, will update the threat library entry for Nongo-class fire control systems in ways that the existing entry, built from older collection and declassified South Korean assessments, has never been precise enough to provide. The burst transmission pattern from the patrol craft to the shore facility is a new data set. The combination of contact behavior and communications timing produces an analytical product about North Korean coastal naval command and control decision cycles that Pacific Command has been seeking for the better part of 2 years. They're checking in with home every time they change speed. The electronic warfare officer notes to no one in particular, with the tone of someone annotating a document that is already writing itself. Someone ashore is running this. The crew on that boat is not making independent decisions. He marks the timestamp on the 4th burst transmission. And whoever is ashore just told them something they did not want to hear. The contact has come to 12 knots. It is 4.5 miles from USS Chafee. On the bridge of USS Chafee, the officer of the deck is watching the contact on his radar repeater with the specific attention of someone who has calculated the intercept geometry enough times in the last 8 minutes that the numbers are no longer producing anxiety, just operational arithmetic. 4.5 miles at 12 knots. The phalanx is an automatic. The SM-2 solutions are updated and available. ROKS Sejong the Great is 21 miles out and closing. There is a version of this situation that becomes significantly more complicated in the next 8 minutes. There is also a version in which the contact, having received the full weight of the SPY-1D's attention and whatever is being communicated from the shore facility, decides that this was a reconnaissance and turns around. At 2:11, the contact turns. Not sharply. It is a wide, deliberate arc that takes the patrol craft from its converging course to a reciprocal heading, back toward the northwest and the Korean coast. The speed increases as it completes the turn. 16 knots, 20, then back toward 30 as the craft settles on its homeward course. The tactical action officer watches the track resolve onto a departing geometry. He watches the range open. He watches the speed confirm that whatever was out there is now going home. He adds a note to the log. He keys the link 16 to update ROKS Sejong the Great and JS Kirishima. He considers the coffee situation. He decides this has been an adequate morning for a fresh pot. The debrief will include the 3-second fire control radar emission, and it will not be ignored, because a radar emission in that mode is not a navigational tool. It is a targeting tool, whatever the crew aboard the Nongo intended when they briefly activated it. Whether it was inadvertent, whether it was a test, whether someone's thumb slipped on the wrong switch in a darkened control room at 32 knots on a moonless night, The emission occurred, it was logged, and it means that the ROE review scheduled for the morning watch's intelligence brief will have a detailed technical annex attached to it. The tactical action officer makes a note about this. The note will eventually be 3 paragraphs in an after-action report that will circulate to the intelligence community and to the operational planning staffs of 3 allied navies. By 2:19, the contact is 9 miles out and increasing. By 2:23, it is 14 miles. By 2:31, it reaches the edge of reliable tracking range and degrades to a surveillance-quality track, heading northwest toward the Korean coast. The SLQ-32 is still logging. The burst transmissions from the patrol craft to the shore facility have continued at irregular intervals throughout the withdrawal, and their timing and content will eventually be correlated with the behavioral changes to produce an analytical timeline of exactly what the command authority ashore was telling the crew and when. This is, from an intelligence standpoint, more valuable than anything the patrol craft did on its outbound leg. The fresh pot of coffee arrives in the Combat Information Center at 2:28. The tactical action officer notes the time in the log with the same clinical precision he applies to all log entries. Contact withdrawn. No hostile action. No weapons employed. Self-defense posture secured. Intelligence collection ongoing. He drinks his coffee. It is hot, and it is good, and it is the most straightforwardly satisfying thing that has happened since 153. He considers whether to note the quality of the coffee in the log, and decides against it. Official records require a certain dignity. The coffee was excellent. This fact will go unrecorded. Now let us talk about what Pyongyang said happened. The first account appeared through state media channels approximately 18 hours after the encounter, which is a longer delay than the Iranian or Houthi information cycles. North Korean strategic communications operate on a different clock, one that reflects the institutional preference for announcements that have been reviewed, approved, and shaped into a form consistent with the standing narrative before they are released. The announcement described a patrol operation by a People's Navy vessel in the waters of the East Sea, Pyongyang's preferred name for the Japan Sea, in which a U.S. Navy warship in the area was monitored and its operational patterns documented. The language was restrained by the standards of North Korean military communiques. It described the operation as a demonstration of the Korean People's Army naval force's capability to operate at will in its sovereign waters. It did not mention the contact's final course, northwest at 30 knots going home. The second account, carried by a state-affiliated outlet, described the encounter as evidence of the KPANF's continued vigilance in the face of U.S.-led provocations in the region, and specifically referenced the trilateral exercise as an aggressive act of military encirclement. This framing is not entirely without logic. 3 Allied destroyers operating a coordinated surveillance exercise 60 nautical miles from the Korean coast is, from Pyongyang's perspective, a statement of intent. The framing does omit several things. It omits the 3-second fire control radar emission, which will not appear in any official North Korean account of the evening. It omits the SPY-1D going to full power and the 18 minutes of deceleration that followed. It omits the turn at 2:11 and the increasing speed on the homeward course. It describes a vigil kept. The track data describes a probe declined. What neither account mentioned, and what could not have been mentioned because neither account's authors knew it had happened. The collection report. The fire control radar characterization. The burst transmission timeline. The 12-page preliminary intelligence product that the electronic warfare officer filed at 4:15, after the contact had been gone for nearly 2 hours, and he had finished correlating the burst transmission timestamps with the behavioral record. The product went to 7th Fleet, to Pacific Command, to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and via liaison channels to the intelligence directorates of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force and the Republic of Korea Navy, both of whom have their own extensive collection programs against North Korean naval systems, and both of whom found the new data specifically complementary to gaps in their existing picture. The patrol craft crew went home, filed their report, and believed correctly from a first-order perspective that they had conducted a reconnaissance of a U.S. Navy vessel operating in contested waters, monitored it at close range, confirmed its position, and returned safely. This is true. What is also true is that they spent 54 minutes generating the most comprehensive close-range electronic emissions dataset on the Nongo-class fire control and communication systems collected in the past 3 years, distributed to 3 allied nations before the crew had finished docking, and that the command authority ashore, whose voice appears in every burst transmission, is now associated with a communication signature that is in the collection files of multiple intelligence services. The reconnaissance ran in both directions. The North Korean crew was much better at advertising their intentions than they were at protecting their methods. On the bridge wing of USS Chafee, at approximately 2:35, 4 minutes after the contact fell off reliable tracking, a lookout is scanning the northwest horizon with night vision equipment. The sea is dark and empty. The contact is gone. The Japan Sea is making its standard Sea State 3 contribution to the ambient noise, which is to say it is being moderate and cold and indifferent to the events of the last 40 minutes. The lookout scans the horizon. There is nothing there. He lowers the night vision device. He looks at the dark water for a moment, the way people look at dark water, which is to say without seeing anything in it. He goes back to his scan. The horizon remains empty. This is, by every operational metric, the correct outcome. The tactical action officer is finishing his log for the watch period. The entry is precise and accurate and contains no underlines or editorializing because official logs maintain their dignity. Contact: bearing 015, Nongo-class patrol craft. Closest point of approach, 4.5 nautical miles. Fire control radar emission logged at 159. Active SPY-1D emission authorized at 0204. Contact decelerated, turned withdrew at 211. No hostile action. No weapons employed. He reviews the entry. He adds one line at the bottom because it is accurate and because the record should reflect the complete picture. Intelligence collection, significant. He underlines it. Then he thinks about it. Then he leaves the underline. The log can have one moment of emphasis. The morning earned it. Bye for now.